When you think of Terrelle Pryor, most of us remember him for his glory days at Ohio State, and some of us remember him for his receiving skills he showcased for the Browns a few years ago. But what happened to this guy? He was one of the most impressive overall athletes we had seen in some time and one of the most heavily recruited high school players in recent memory, in more than one sport. But where is he now? Today, we look back at Terrelle Pryor's journey in sports and reminisce on how he is one of the most underrated athletes of all time. Terrelle Pryor Sr. was born on June 20th, 1989. He was raised around the area of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and had quite a rough upbringing, dealing with serious financial struggles as well as being raised primarily by his mother. Growing up, Pryor spent a lot of time living in hotels here and there, as well as spending time at friends and family's residence, and really just never having a real place to call home. Pryor's mother was raising 3 kids by herself, and things were not easy. She was working all hours of the day and night trying to support her kids, but it wasn't always enough. But around the 5th grade, it was clearly obvious that Terrelle was a world-class athlete. A man by the name of Teddy Sarniak saw the potential in the young man and thought he could help him and give him the tools he needed to become a star one day. He basically became that father figure in Pryor's life for the first time, and he did nothing but help the young man, teaching him life lessons and keeping him out of trouble. Pryor still grew up in a bad area, but he managed to stay out of trouble, and the people around him, they did what they could to help him stay away from that life because they knew the gifts and potential that he really had. In 8th grade, Pryor grew from 5'10" to about 6'3", and it was obvious that he was in a league of his own athletically. Going into high school, the guys he was playing against were no match for a now 6'3" athletic specimen, and the skill gap was noticeable. First of all, this kid was clocked at a 4.4 40-yard dash time as a freshman in high school.
What the hell is that?
I don't know, man.
That's my problem. That's what I don't understand. You know.
Fans from all over the area used to come out to watch the kid, but not just in football, also in basketball. Now, the high school career of Terrelle Pryor, both on the football field and on the basketball court, is the reason he became one of the most highly recruited players in recent memory. By the end of his junior year, it felt like the entire country knew who Terrelle Pryor really was. He led his football team to a 14-2 record and a trip to the state finals. At quarterback, he completed 92 of 163 passes for 1,732 yards and 15 touchdowns with only 5 picks. But where he was really special was with his legs. He carried the ball 197 times for an amazing 1,676 yards and 28 rushing touchdowns, an 8.5 yards per carry average, and a touchdown once about every 7 carries. This also means in 16 games he recorded 43 total touchdowns. Oh yeah, and by the way, he also had 10 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball, which he also played. He was clearly one of the most talented players in the country, and every college wanted him. At the time, he was drawing comparisons to the once great Vince Young.
Everybody like, where you been? Where you at, V? Why you not doing this? I'm like, because I choose not to.
The next year, Pryor and his team finally got that championship win they couldn't get the previous year. Pryor had another amazing year and became the first football player in Pennsylvania state history to run as well as pass for over 4,000 yards in a high school career. His team also went 30-2 his last 2 seasons. Mind-blowing numbers. Some of Pryor's high school career accomplishments include being named the 2-time Pennsylvania Player of the Year for the entire country, and MVP of the All-American Bowl. Pryor was easily considered the best quarterback in the country, and he was ranked number 4 overall in the class of 2008. It was clear he was the next big thing. As much hype that was around Terrelle Pryor in his football career, he was a demon on the basketball court as well. His athleticism really worked for him on the court. I mean, by the end of high school, he was about 6'6", 220 with a 4'4", 40, bench pressed about 300 pounds, and had a 37-inch vertical. And to be completely honest, he was effective in basketball a lot quicker than in football at the beginning of high school. As a freshman, he averaged about 17 points and 10 rebounds a game, but Pryor knew he was mostly just getting by on his athleticism and slashing ability, so what did he do? Well, he developed the jumper. Sophomore year, he increased his stats and became a 20 and 10 guy, averaging 21.5 points and 10 rebounds a game. Junior year was not only his year to break out in football, it was also an amazing year for basketball as well. He averaged 20 and 10 again, but added 7 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks a game, and led his team to the state semifinals. He became so good at basketball that he actually committed to playing basketball for his hometown school of Pitt under coach Jamie Dixon for a period of time before later withdrawing the commitment. Senior year, he led the basketball team to a state championship as well, and finished his last 2 seasons in basketball with a record of 53-9, scoring a school record 2,285 points. He was recruited by many big-name basketball schools and managed to be ranked by ESPN as the number 39 high school basketball player in the entire country.
Oh my God! Wow!
And not in a shabby class either. The class of 2008 had players like Brandon Jennings, Tyreek Evans, True Holiday, DeMar DeRozan, Kemba Walker, Greg Monroe, Chris Middleton, Draymond Green. There were so many players that turned out to be good in this class, it's nuts to think about how good Pryor really was at basketball. Oh yeah, and he was also ranked ahead of Klay Thompson and Reggie Jackson. Just saying. He was listed as a small forward, but could really play almost every position. It was clear Pryor could be an impact player at the next level in basketball as well as football. During Pryor's senior season, everyone was wondering where he would decide to play in college. Most assumed with how much hype was around his football ability, he would most likely be committing to a football school, but a lot of people believed he truly could play both sports for whatever school he went to, despite how good the team was in either sport. Pryor originally planned to announce his decision on National Signing Day, which is what most of the big name recruits do, but in the midst of a playoff basketball run, Pryor decided to push back his announcement. After helping win the state basketball championship for his school, he decided to finally announce his intentions to play football for the Ohio State University. And to be completely honest, he could have played basketball for them too if he really wanted to, and he could have been valuable on one of the best teams in the country year in and year out. But at the end of the day, everyone was so hyped over this scrambling quarterback's ability on the football field, so most people kind of forgot about how good this guy really was at basketball. I would have loved to have been able to watch this guy show out in both sports in college, and I truly believe he could have been really good in both. So how was he so good at both sports? How was he able to become a top 40 player in the entire country in both? It was his incredible natural gifts, athleticism, but most importantly, his insane work ethic. In high school, his coaches said that no one could outwork him and they had never seen anything like him. It was obvious that whatever sport he played, he was going to be a star. So now here we are. College is where most of us know of Terrelle Pryor for his major accomplishments at Ohio State, and for good reason. Pryor led Ohio State to an 8-1 record as a starter his freshman year. Now, going into his sophomore year, there was a lot of hype around the kid. Before the season began, he was clocked running a 4.33 40-yard dash. He was the fastest player on the entire team as a quarterback. Although he struggled a bit early in the season, he became a much better passer throughout the year and led the Buckeyes to a Rose Bowl win at the end of the season. which was his best game of his career at the time, and he was actually named MVP of the game. Going into his junior year, Pryor was projected to have a monster season along with Ohio State as a whole. He ended up finishing the year with 2,772 passing yards and 27 touchdowns with a 65% completion percentage. He also added another 754 rushing yards and 4 more rushing touchdowns. Now, going into his senior year, if you remember, Pryor was actually suspended for the first 5 games of the year due to making apparently thousands of dollars off signed memorabilia, selling it to fans and whatnot. More and more reports came out along these lines. Next thing you know, Pryor was up to his head in controversy and he decided to withdraw from the university. He was then banned from all contact with the university athletic program, but ultimately he became eligible for the upcoming draft, so he was still going to get a shot at the NFL. When asked about the money Pryor made later down the road, he did say that he did do it and he would do it again, and he really needed the money for his mom and family, so it's kind of hard to say you can fault him for that. Pryor held his pro day on August 20th, 2011, where 17 teams had representatives attending. And as many had expected, his athleticism blew many scouts away. He was measured at 6'4.5" and weighed 240 pounds, but his 40-yard dash times were clocked in from about 4.32 to 4.54, which is extremely impressive for his size, and actually for any player. But his throwing ability was definitely not impressive, and there was many question marks relating to if he would be able to be solid enough at throwing the ball in the NFL. Nonetheless, the Oakland Raiders selected Pryor in the 3rd round and soon after signed him to a 4-year contract. Pryor just had to serve a little 5-game suspension for the whole Ohio State ordeal, and then he was eligible to start his NFL career. Pryor didn't play much at all his first 2 seasons in the league, coming in at receiver a couple times, and that's really it. He made his first appearance as a starter at quarterback in the last game of the 2012 season. Starter Carson Palmer went down with an injury, and it was Pryor's time to showcase his talents and potential. In his first start, Pryor threw for 2 touchdowns and rushed for 1 more, but completed less than 50% of his passes, and in the 3-point loss, there was good and there was bad. There were some things to take away on both sides. Going into the 2013 season, Carson Palmer was traded to the Cardinals, and Pryor was expected to compete for the starting quarterback job with Matt Flynn and Tyler Wilson. At the beginning of September, it was announced that Pryor would be the Week 1 starter. In the first game against the Colts, Pryor rushed for 112 yards, which was a new Raider quarterback rushing record. Things were looking up for the scrambling QB. In weeks 2 and 3, Pryor didn't wow, but he didn't really make many mistakes as well, and he was doing a decent job until he was injured in week 3 and forced to miss the next week. Matt Flynn took over but struggled in week 4, and Pryor got the job back when he became healthy again. As the season went on, it was clear Pryor was probably not going to be the long-term option in Oakland. Overall, he started 9 games in 2013, but only threw 7 touchdowns while having 11 interceptions. He added 576 rushing yards and 2 TDs, but he also had 7 fumbles. Between his struggles and him getting injured a few times, the Raiders decided to trade Pryor to the Seahawks for just a 7th round pick. Sadly enough, he was released during the final roster cuts before the season started, and many thought his career might be over just like that. In 2015, Pryor was signed by both the Chiefs and Bengals, but ended up getting released in a timely manner both times. The day after being cut by the Bengals, and for the 3rd time in just over a year, he decided to make it clear through his agent that he was willing to switch to the wide receiver position and use his size and speed to continue his hopes of playing in the NFL. A few days later, the Cleveland Browns reached out and claimed Pryor off the waivers, and he ended up making the final roster spot at wide receiver, just to be waived later on once again, and then re-signed again towards the end of the season. It was a roller coaster for Pryor, but he was doing his best to make it work. Going into the 2016 season, Pryor worked his ass off and he was named a starter for the Browns at wide receiver going into the year. This was a huge breakout year for Pryor. He managed to end the season with 77 catches for just over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, these are pretty good numbers for a dude that just switched over the position. But what happened next is where I ultimately think Pryor sort of screwed up, and it ended up costing him pretty much his career moving forward. The Browns offered him what they thought was a fair offer to keep him, but Pryor and his agent thought that he was worth more and they didn't accept it. Problem was, no one else was really trying to give this guy the money he wanted. The Browns and Pryor seemed to regret it working out later on, and the Browns had nothing but good things to say about his work ethic. Pryor also said later that he regrets messing it up and he wished that he could have stayed in Cleveland and figured it all out. Ultimately, he signed with the Redskins, but they really didn't use him and he only lasted a year there. In 2018, he was cut by both the Jets and the Bills, which now brings us to 2019 and more recent times for the once promising quarterback. Pryor had spent the season thus far as a free agent, but a few teams had shown a little possible interest. I mean, at age 30, time is ticking for Pryor to re-jumpstart his career, and then on November 30th, his name rose back into the news. But not for his chance at another NFL team. This was something completely different.
Tonight, Terrelle Pryor is recovering from stab wounds at Mercy Hospital. He's been charged with simple assault. A woman's been charged with attempted homicide.
Now, with the charges pending and more of the story gonna unfold as we move forward, this might be the end of Pryor's chances back into the NFL, and I can't help but wonder quite a few things. Why couldn't Pryor stay on a team without getting cut after he clearly showed he can play the wide receiver position at a high level? Or why couldn't Pryor and the Browns work something out after his breakout year? Maybe he would still be there today. And I mean, what if Pryor played receiver since a younger age? Imagine how good he could have been at the position sooner. But the one thing that I think about the most is, what if he chose basketball instead of football? Would his skills and play style on the basketball court have translated better to the NBA compared to how his skills translated to the NFL? Could Pryor have become as good a college player at Ohio State playing basketball? Sadly, we will never know these answers, but one thing's for sure. The fact that Pryor was nationally ranked in the top 40 in basketball and football, combined with his crazy size and athleticism in college, and the fact that he switched to wide receiver mid-career, and all these things just make me appreciate how amazing of an athlete this guy really was and probably still is. Terrelle Pryor may not be remembered in 20 years, at least at the NFL level, but I will not forget how much of an athlete this guy really was. One of the most impressive all-around athletes in recent memory that sadly will be forgotten about. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, peace.